Let me start with an uncomfortable, some would say inconvenient truth. Each one of us is a cause of global warming, but each one of us can make choices to change the things we buy, the electricity we use, the cars we drive. We can make choices to bring our individual carbon emissions to zero. The solutions should be in our hands. We just have to have the determination to make it happen. We have everything that we need to reduce carbon emissions, everything but political will. They were the words of Al Gore some 14 years ago. But the real truth is that while we have some of the solutions, if not many of the solutions, perhaps we are showing insufficient will. In that same year, of course, Lord Stern was producing his climate change report. Unfortunately, those calls were heard by the last Labour government, and it acted fast. In a global first, Labour legislated with its 2008 Climate Change Act, establishing a Committee on Climate Change, which has been responsible for recommending carbon budgets, a series of rolling targets for greenhouse gas emissions, to take the UK on a path to reduce emissions by 80% compared with 1990 levels by 2050. Gore said we have to have the determination to bring about change, and the inconvenient truth is that if we don't, and if the government does not lead the way with determination and conviction that is needed, we will all be the victims of permanent climate change. He said it was about us making choices, choices we make as individuals and those made by governments. Labour's Climate Change Act was a turning point. The carbon targets, or budgets, have been met primarily through addressing power generation, but it is transport that remains an issue. For the past decade or more, the contribution of carbon dioxide emissions from surface transport has remained broadly flat at around 27%, having fallen just 3% between 2008 and 2018, according to the report from the Committee on Climate Change. It is in that context that the importance of challenging the sector must be seen, because it cannot be left to the vehicle manufacturers or the energy providers to take financial risks in the absence of certainty from government. Nor should consumers, rightly wanting to do the right thing, be penalised or disadvantaged by being first movers, only to find the government fails to match their ambition. Certainly, the industry strongly supports the decarbonisation of road transport, recognising the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions both today and on the pathway to achieving net zero. Across the sector, it is investing significantly to deliver smart and sustainable mobility. And quite rightly, the industry is calling for the right ecosystem, the enablers, to support consumers with their transition to the ultra-low or zero-emission vehicles. As such, comprehensive multi-sector strategy is needed, including key elements of energy decarbonisation, investment in infrastructure, and transitional consumer incentives to enable this to happen. Let me therefore consider, in turn, the strategies that are required for the market, industrial, energy, and skills, and for each, the role of government is fundamental. In terms of market, it would be easy just to leave it to the market and say, well, it's not working. The investments up front are too great to choose the wrong product or technology. Manufacturers certainly can't transform the market alone. Market frameworks and certainties are required to give consumers and businesses confidence to take the leap into these technologies and to power our transition towards alternative fuels. And understandably, until these vehicles are as affordable to buy and as easy to own and operate as conventional cars or other vehicles, the consumer or business will not travel with the technologies. You know, in the first half of the 2010s, we saw fewer than 25,000 new plug-in cars and vans sold in total. Last month, battery electric and plug-in hybrid cars took up a substantial account of 1 in 10 registrations as new models. Now, of course, it'd be easy to compare and contrast with countries like Norway, but they have a very different industrial base and very different consumers and also energy provision. It's far better to look at our peers such as France and Germany and really see what is going on there. But we need to avoid the over-deliberation on technologies and make a decision. Not a UK-only decision, but one that reflects where other primary markets and tech developers are moving. We need to decide with passenger vehicles, for solus occupancy, multiple occupancy, what sort of energy power unit is most appropriate. Likewise for commercial vehicles, autonomous or manned, bus and minivan vehicles, and heavy goods vehicles, and specialist industrial, commercial and military, including refuse vehicles such as those produced by Dennis Eagle in my constituency, and earth movers and others such as JCB, and businesses such as Thwaites, just outside my constituency in Warwickshire. Let me just now turn to the industrial strategy that is required. Naturally, all of us want to ensure that the UK is at the forefront of any new technologies. And of course, the UK should have the ambition to be a lead in the ultra-low emission vehicle market and a leader in manufacturing. We need to attract new investment, including upskilling the workforce, which I'll come back to. We need a battery gigafactory investment, but the supply chain development to go with it, and strategic research and development investment at a globally competitive level, such as that being done at the Advanced Propulsion Centre at Warwick University. And we need the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre being built now just outside Coventry. It's due to open later this year, and it was a collaboration which the government supported, Coventry City Council, and the local enterprise partnership, along with Warwick Manufacturing Group, which was awarded £80 million. But developing the technologies is one thing. Commercialising it is another. And we presently have 0 gigafactories, while other countries already have them or are in being established. Sadly, we missed out on Tesla, who made the decision to invest in Germany, their factory just outside Berlin, to produce batteries, battery packs, powertrains for use in Tesla vehicles, but also to manufacture the new Tesla Model Y. It will produce 500,000 units a year, employing 7,000 vehicles. They were attracted, so Elon Musk says, to the UK, but sadly, the decision, Brexit, meant that they really wanted to be at the centre of Europe, and it would be a safer bet for them to invest there. So that's why they went. But as Tesla is doing, that industrial strategy needs to be underpinned by a super low-carbon energy strategy. And the energy needs of the manufacturing must be supplied by renewables and low-carbon sources. Particularly so, given that the manufacturing processes demanded in EV production are up to a third higher than for an internal combustion engine vehicle. So let me just turn to the energy strategy, which is a crunch area for the UK and ultimately a deal breaker. UK electricity prices are 68% above the EU average, according to Bayer's data in 2018, having risen 55% since 2010. It is a seriously burdensome premium that the manufacturing sector has to pay. A 2018 UCL report found that our European neighbours had reaped the benefits of better interconnections, more cross-border trading, and long-term supply contracts. And whilst the Prime Minister announced just in the last 24 hours more offshore wind generation capacity, we need to embrace more onshore wind to seriously drive down energy costs. Let me just turn to network and planning and the importance of delivering energy locally to manufacturing, but also to the consumer. The present infrastructure is far from adequate. We need to see significant and urgent investment into creating an accessible, ubiquitous and interoperable network of public electric charging, but likewise natural gas and hydrogen refuelling points, to make it as easy for consumers to fill up as they do from a petrol pump now. National grids say that net zero will require significantly higher levels of electricity generation. In one of their scenarios, they forecast that by 2050, we will require almost 3 times more capacity than today. And even in the slowest decarbonising scenario, they foresee a 75% reduction in total energy demand for road transport, which is really positive. And whilst hydrogen will play a role, electrification is key to the decarbonising of transport, with at least 60% forecast of all road transport being electrified in their scenarios. So critical to this is a massive, and I mean massive, increase in the number of charge points. And this will require a strategic national plan delivered locally. I appreciate the government has announced its Project Rapide, 12 months ago, with a £500 million investment. But according to Frost and Sullivan's analysis for the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, a total of 7 million charge points are needed by 2030, of which just under 2 million would be public. And by 2035, this would increase to a total of just under 12 million required. For motorway travel, there would be a requirement of 7,150 kilowatt charge points on motorway service areas also needed. And according to the electric vehicle charging app ZapMap, the UK currently only has 19,000 on-street charge points today. That means that we'll need to be installing over 500 chargers across the UK every day to meet our 2035 target. Now, whilst those numbers seem huge, they are what is needed if we are to address consumer perceptions and and recharging fears. According to a recent Savanta Comres survey on behalf of the Society for Motor Manufacturers and Traders, 44% of car owners are discouraged from buying an EV because of a perceived lack of local chargers. So if we are to meet this challenge, governments at every level need to work with the private sector, the local energy distribution networks, and in partnership with charge point providers like Tesla, BP ChargeMaster, and others to deliver the EV charging infrastructure. According to the Renewable Energies Association, in the past 24 months, the number of companies developing charging networks in the UK has increased significantly. Few of the UK networks, major or minor, are members of interoperability platforms. And this stands in contrast to other countries where this is rapidly becoming the norm. And Netherlands is probably one of the best examples we could look at. One of the solutions is to look at interoperability or roaming platforms, which would allow the consumers of individual charge points operators to charge on other networks also associated with that hub. The hub would monitor EVSE usage and can settle payments between operators. And for that, the roaming platform does that for a small fee. A second solution would be looking at peer-to-peer arrangements, which would involve the negotiation of direct commercial relationships and agreements between CPOs to allow for a consumer to use multiple networks while using a single app or account without the involvement of a roaming platform. We also need to ensure that we deliver smart charging. National Grid has estimated that 80% of electric vehicle drivers will use smart charging by 2050, and this will help balance almost half of the UK's energy demands brought on by the move to zero emissions driving. Imperial has done a huge amount of work with Nissan looking at this, and there is a massive opportunity for the park of electric vehicles to be essentially a huge energy storage for the grid. Let me just turn to heavy goods vehicles and large vehicle strategy, because it's very easy to talk simply about passenger vehicles. And I appreciate that the Prime Minister has talked about massively investing in hydrogen, but we are falling behind other nations on hydrogen mobility. You look at what is happening in Germany and the number of buses being run on hydrogen and elsewhere, and I appreciate there are plans afoot in certain parts of the UK for this to be introduced. But we need to get behind it urgently. I know there's news of a hydrogen hub in the Tees Valley, and that's really welcome. But you look at what the South Korean government has done, setting a target of 200,000 hydrogen vehicles and 450 hydrogen refueling stations by 2025. Why can't the UK set similar ambitions? Let me just finally turn to education and skills. Because whilst we need these strategies, we need to ensure that we have the skill set to deliver them, not just simply in higher education, which is obviously the one that is always highly regarded. The development and supply of skills through our further education colleges is critical, but also developing STEM subjects through our schools, not just for the development and research and development of new technologies, but the training and requirement to actually be able to maintain and service this huge number of vehicles which are going to be coming onto UK streets, whether they be passenger car, commercial vehicle, or heavy goods vehicles. So, Mr. Betts, in conclusion, this is a really important sector for the UK economy. It's worth £82 billion in turnover, £20 billion in additional value to the UK economy, and is the UK's largest exporter of goods, accounting for 13% of all UK goods exported. It employs 168,000 people in manufacturing, supporting 820,000 across the wider automotive sector. And it is critical that we invest heavily and support and show direction to this incredibly precious industry. The government has made great progress in encouraging EV ownership through VAT exemptions and the plug-in car grant, but I do believe more needs to be done in the rapid development of charging infrastructure, but also the encouragement of consumers to consider switching over to electric vehicles. Considerations such as tax breaks, free or reduced parking, generous long-term plug-in grants, readily available, reliable, fast EV charging on streets, but also in shopping centres and at places of work. But we need better battery tech, more ambition from government to secure those gigafactory manufacturing plants in the UK. Alongside West Midlands MPs, I wrote to the government to see if we could secure investment in a gigafactory in Coventry to support companies such as Jaguar, Land Rover, and of course Aston Martin. But the grid and the district network operators need a clear roadmap for our transition from government to be supported through the transition to greater electricity use. We need a joined-up multi-sector strategy and roadmap with targets alongside positive consumer messages on all technology choices. It is Labour's policy to end the sale of new petrol, diesel and hybrid cars and vans by 2030. And our electric car revolution from the last general election, where we talked about investing £3.6 billion into EV charging networks, 2.5 million interest-free loans for the purchase of electric vehicles, saving buyers up to £5,000. Mr. Betts, what I would say is that the government needs to get behind this urgently. We need new, cleaner diesel as part of that mix, because without that, we will not ensure a managed transition. But diesel, together with plug-in hybrids, battery electric vehicles and hydrogen-powered vehicles, to quote Al Gore, comprise the solutions that are there. We need a managed transition, which is critical in ensuring that manufacturers and consumers are not left high and dry by legislation and government policies that impact on the value of their investments or purchases. And for the former, their willingness and, above all, ability to invest is premised by their immediate profitability and future return. But it needs a coherent industrial strategy, conjoined with a market strategy, underpinned by major public investment in infrastructure, in parallel with the private sector. Combined, we can actually achieve that ambition of delivering zero-carbon vehicles by 2030 or 2035, depending upon who you are. Thank you.